Hello, welcome to Oxford Heirlooms. In this video, I'm going to be working on the neck of the day gown, and I'm going to put an entredo band with gathered lace up there. Okay, now the first thing that I need to do is I need to sew up some gathering threads at the top of my neck hole opening. So I have my machine set for a basting length stitch, which I'll use to gather up. Now my first basting stitch will be about 1/4 inch away from the top of the neckband, and the second one will be about 1/4 inch away from that. So this will take me a couple of minutes to sew these basting stitches. Now when I get to the shoulder seam, I'm going to make sure that my shoulder seams are pointing towards the sleeves. Okay, so I'm going to do the first pass and then I'll do the second pass of the basting stitch, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my basting stitches sewn along the entire top of the neck hole opening of the day gown. Now, as much as possible, I'm going to try to not gather this fabric and lace between the two slanted vertical lace panels and the embroidered panel, only because I don't want the embroidery to bunch up in the middle of it. Okay, so I'm going to take my day gown and set it aside for a minute, because now I need to do some prep work on the pieces that will be the neckband itself. Now the neckband for the Becca day gown, I measured it and it's 10 inches long, but I want my neckband to be just slightly larger since I'm making this for a 12-month frock, and I've cut a piece of entredo that's 12 inches long, and then I have a piece of 1/2 inch lace, edging lace, that's 1.5 times the length of the entredos for me to gather that up. Now I need to start this neckband prep process by using my embroidery scissors and cutting the excess batiste away from one side of the entredo. Okay, so I've got that entredo prepped. Now, since I do want to be able to put the entredo onto the neckband at the halfway point, I'm going to fold this in half, and I'm going to use my blue fabric marking pen, and I'm going to make a little blue dot halfway along the edge of the entredo. Now, before I can change to a zigzag and zigzag my gathered lace to this entredo, I need to, with a silk pin, I need to grab a header thread and gather this lace until it's the same length as the entredo. Okay, so this will take me a minute to get this all gathered up. Let me see if I can grab a header thread real quickly. There we go, I've got one. Okay, so I've got a little header thread, and I'm just going to begin to gather my lace until it's the same length as the entredo band that's going to go on the neck hole opening. So this will take me a minute, so let me finish gathering off camera. Okay, so I've got my lace gathered up. I'm going to change my machine to a zigzag stitch and the appropriate stitch length and stitch width for sewing entree. And then I'm going to zigzag this gathered lace to my piece of entree. And like I've mentioned before, I don't use a special lace attaching foot. But if you have one and you're comfortable using it, by all means, go ahead and use it. Okay, just be careful that the lace doesn't bunch up and fold over on itself. Okay, so I'm going in the entree hole on the left. Let me see if I can zoom in. So I'm going in the entree hole on the left and gathering and catching the header of the lace on the right. But let me finish attaching this lace off camera. Okay, so I have created my neckband piece. What I'm going to do is that little blue dot at the center of the neckband piece, and I've got a little blue dot up at the center of the middle panel that has the embroidery in it. I'm going to line those dots up, and I'm going to put a silk pin in there. And since what I want to do is not gather between the lace panels, the two lace panels up at the top. Let me bring my lace down. I don't want it to get sewn in there. So I'm going to pin that all into place. So hopefully when I begin to gather the fabric, it will not gather in between here. Okay, and I think it'll give me a prettier look on the front of the day gown. Okay, so I've got the whole neckline to draw up the gathering threads. Let me come over here and get my two gathering threads. Just gather that up tight. There's quite a bit of fabric, but since this is Swiss Batiste, it gets small pretty quickly. There. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, about 1/2 of an inch, I'm going to have my entree band. Let me see if I can show you this. I'm going to have my entree band hang over the back placket opening of the neckband, of the neckline, by about 1/2 of an inch. And then I'm going to pin this on. And once again, I'm going to try to not gather between these lace bands. So give me a minute to get this all pinned on all the way along and gather the other side. Okay, so I've got my neckband pinned to the neck hole opening, and on both sides of the placket, the entree band is hanging over about 1/2 of an inch. And in the center, I have managed to keep this not gathered right at the very center. Now I have my sewing machine, I'm setting it back to a standard straight stitch, and I'm going to sew with a straight line right to the right of the entree line on the batiste. And I'll take my pins out as I come to them. And just kind of go slow. Now this will take me a minute to get this sewn all the way along, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got that neckband sewn all along the neck hole opening of the day gown. Now, one of the next steps I do, but not the very next step, is we're going to turn this entrecot band to the inside of the gown and zigzag along the seam. But since we're not going to be trimming the entrecot, I'm going to set my machine to a zigzag, and this raw edge up here along the top of the entrecot neckband, we're going to zigzag that. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I've got my machine set for a zigzag, and I'm just going to finish off that seam with a zigzag. Clip my threads. Okay, now I am going to, since I've got some little stray raggedy threads up along the top where I zigzagged, I don't want those threads to poke out from around the neck hole opening. So I'm just going to, with my embroidery scissors, I'm just going to trim close to my zigzag edge. And catch all those stray threads. Okay. All right, now I'm going to go to the ironing board, and very carefully I'm going to press this entrecot seam toward the inside of the gown so that I can come back and zigzag it in place along the fold of the gathered fabric in the entrecot holes. Okay, so I have that seam pressed to the inside, and I've got my machine set for a zigzag and the appropriate stitch length and stitch width for sewing entrecot. Now, in some places, the gathered fabric is just a little bit thick, but if you've pressed it nicely, it will stay down and you can zigzag it. Okay, so I'm going to start here on this end and just begin to catch that gathered thread along the entrecot band. Oops, excuse me, knocked the camera. Okay, this will take me a minute to get this zigzagged all the way around the neckline, so I'll be right back. Okay, so that neckband is on, and it is not gathered along that little front section where I wanted it to not be gathered. So you can still see this lower gathering thread. So I'm going to use my seam ripper and pull that lower gathering thread out. Okay, and then I'll reach inside and get the bobbin thread. There we go. And pull it out as well. Okay, so that makes a real pretty neckline for the day gown. Now I'm going to get my 2 inches of 1/16 inch silk ribbon and my that I'm going to use for my button loop and one of my buttons, and I'm going to use a needle and thread, and I'm going to tack this excess entree to the inside of the gown and sew a little loop on right there. So this will take me a minute to get this started. Okay, so that finishes off that neckline really nicely. And from the back of the day gown, let me kind of show you a couple of little close-ups. As you're looking at the back of the day gown, I've got the button sewn in on the left-hand side. Got my little pearl button. And I have created a little ribbon loop for the button. I tacked it down. I folded the ribbon under. Let me see if you can see that, so there's not a raw edge. But I simply sewed the little ribbon to the neckline. And that will just close up real nicely around the buttonhole. And so we have the neckline finished. Okay, and I like the way it is not gathered here in the center because it helps make the embroidery stay a little bit more visible. Okay, the next video should be the last, should be the last video for creating this day gown. And we're gonna work, let me see if I can zoom out for a minute. We're gonna prepare the lace for the bottom edge of the neck of the day gown and sew that on. And what I will also be doing is I've got my silk ribbon that I will weave into the entree beading of the little cuffs, which will make for a real pretty little pink detail on the day gown. But sewing the neckband and the buttonhole loop and sewing the button on was what we were doing today. Thank you.